it's in the part where we're doing the mentorship. I'll suffice it to say that I'm a jack of all trades, and the other thing that's not mentioned in there, that are two things actually. One is, I counted it up, I've been doing some form of journalism for the better part of 46 years, starting back when I was working at a middle school paper in the 7th grade. And the second thing, and I'll get my shameless plug in first early so I don't forget, I'm the chairman-elect of the New Mexico Daily, our University of New Mexico Student Publications Alumni Group. Mouthful. So you'll be seeing a lot of me for over the next couple of years. It's a 2-year term. I start in July. So we're doing a lot of different things with outreach to try to help staff and help grow our base and our membership. For those of you who are underclass, hang on, in a couple of years when you graduate, you're all automatically a member once you're done. No cost, anything like that. I just hope you'll participate in our activities. We have a bunch of things planned, including a birthday celebration in early June. And we'll also maybe participate with some of the awards and different things like that along the way. So, get that out of the way. So, your editor, along with Beth, who was putting together, supervising the program, identified a bunch of different topics that they wanted to hit various speakers to touch on, and this hopefully will be one in a series. But then they narrowed it down to 5. And I said, well, somebody's got to be the guinea pig and go first, so here I am. But the 5, all 3 of them basically came together on what you see on your worksheet. The idea of the 5 W's and the H, writing a news lead, and finally the inverted pyramid. So they all, you can't talk about one without the other. So by chance, basically we're gonna knock out 3 of those 5 today, and even touch a little bit on interviewing and bring that up first, because these all represent questions. They are the basis of gathering facts. They're the basis of your news story. And in a traditional news lead, they are providing the information that you want to include. So try to make this as interactive as possible to keep everybody from falling asleep. These are all questions. Anybody help me identify one of the 5 W's or one of the H? Anybody?
What?
What? I'm going to put these in a specific order, and I'll explain why in a minute.
Who? Where? When?
Why?
And finally, the lonely H.
How?
Very good. Okay. In the 45 years I've been doing this, this is one thing that really hasn't changed. When you're out gathering questions, and this is the order that I learned it in: who, what, where, when, why, how. Who especially is important because, let's face it, people like to read about other people. And you want to identify the person that you're talking to or getting your information from very early in the story. So once you've got that out of the way, you want to explain what's going on, what are you doing, why am I telling you? Why is on that long? What's important about what you're telling me? The when and the where are kind of interchangeable. I just learned them in that order. It's why and the how. We'll talk a little bit about, because they're going to be kind of in their own separate entity over recent years as development journalism continues to develop. When and where, and some of this stuff, the old days we used to say everything had to be in the lead. Put all 6 of those elements in your lead. Well, that's beginning, first off, it's not really practical. And second, a lot of these things are kind of assumed. Or you can kind of get an inference from just based on the story, and you don't really need to explicitly write them down. But you do want to make sure that it's clear to your reader what you're talking about and why you're doing it this way. So, as an example, this is pure off the top of my head. Let's write a news lead using these questions about something very simple, like my visit today. So we want to say who. So who's the who? Anybody?
Eric.
Okay, yeah, and please call me Eric, don't call Mr. Maddy with my dad, okay? And then you, I'm just gonna abbreviate, retired journalist. What? What am I doing?
Visited the Lobo.
Yep. But more specifically, perhaps, we want to say made presentation to the Lobo editors and staff. When? Well, today. If you're writing this for tomorrow's paper, it'd be Sunday. The time element is not important here. I could have done this any time during the day at your convenience. But if you're covering a news story when somebody got shot or so, the time element is important, you would include it there. So say noon. Where? Let's call it the Daily Lobo classroom. Why and how? Why? Well, but besides my shameless plug, is hopefully to help increase your knowledge. And how is already pretty much assumed because it's already mentioned up there. I did a presentation, so I wouldn't necessarily go back and repeat it, but it's, you know, it's there. Just abbreviate. Now, you've got Newsly. Retired journalist Eric Maddy made a presentation of the Daily Lobo Sunday in the Lobo classroom to talk about journalism leads. Okay, so those, one thing that you, excuse me, there is no wrong answer and there's no real right answer when it comes to doing this. For practice, you have time, I encourage you to try to write a news lead, starting with what? Starting with when and where. I mean, there may not be as, you know, sexy or grab your attention as much as perhaps this format does, but it can be done. A presentation by Eric Maddy to the Daily Lobo staff on Sunday talked about journalism. Starting with a what? You start with the where, although where is usually more in broadcast journalism, especially if you watch the national news. Is, you know, it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever comes on, and say, you know, in Beirut today, something happened, right? To kind of set a context. So you can write that, but you need to think about what you're writing for and who your audience is. The fact is, no matter what you're covering something that happened in the past. Maybe recent past, may have been yesterday, may have been last night, but you're not getting breaking news to the point where something happens at 9 o'clock at night and you want to put it in the paper that you're going to be able to get that message out any quicker unless you're using your internet, which is pretty much what's doing now. I'm gearing this more towards print, but it all works the same, basically. So people are interested in people. So that's why I've got who first. Like I said, a lot of these things are pretty much sometimes self-explanatory and follow in. Usually a news lead, I'll just leave it up. News lead generally is no more than 2 sentences. You should try to keep it as one. And a good news lead will do several things. First, it will make you very dear friends with the copy editors who write the headlines, because they're going through a bunch of stories in a hurry, and they want to be able to write a headline, and they want to be able to look at the first paragraph or 2 of your story and get the basic understanding of it so that they can write a headline. And just as a good headline attracts readers, then hopefully the headline will play into your news lead and it will continue to attract readers. Because your goal, obviously, is to get everybody to read the entire story. In today's world, as we know, people come and go in a hurry, and they don't necessarily have time to read through all that story. So they'll just look at the headlines and maybe the first couple of paragraphs. So it's your job as a writer to capture their interest and bring them into your entire story. Not all these elements have to be in the lead, but somewhere in the story, by either direct words or by basic inference, when we're in the context of the story, your reader should be able to figure out these questions, the answers to these questions. And you might find, like I have, that been doing this so long, that 5w's and an H have really almost become a way of life, a way of organization for me, because I think so long, that way so long. You know, so I gotta do something, okay, who am I gonna see, what time do I have to be there, all that kind of stuff. So if you answer those 6 basic questions, you've got it made. And you're smarter than probably 75% of the journalists who are actually working in the field these days, it seems to me. I don't see it a lot of times. One thing about the lead is it has changed and evolved over the years. I used to write standard news lead in my head as I was driving back to the office to write a story, so that tells you how long I've been at this. But so I could just sit there, and I literally, for a while, I used to go to a state high school basketball tournament, and I was the media director for the association. But I was also a correspondent for UPI, which is the wire service. So I could go down at the end of the fourth quarter, watch the end of the game, pick up a stat sheet, and pick up the phone and call and say, John Smith scored 26 points, and Joe Jones added 18 rebounds as Nora defeated Cuesta 87-81 in the first round of the Mexico High School basketball tournament at University Arena. Covers most all of them. The why is obviously inferred because 2 teams are playing, and one wants to win. The how would be more of the details. You know, Escalante scored, or whoever scored 18 straight points in the fourth quarter to come from behind for a 10-point, you know, some interesting detail and facts as you go along the way. So, the lead has changed in the fact that now people more and more want to know why and how. Why is this important? Why are you taking space on my computer or on paper to tell me about this? How is this going to affect me? Are you raising my taxes? What is this gonna mean? So the why and how have become details that, as today's society has become more hustle and bustle. Think about, I used to have unfortunately I can't find it, a broad picture of the front page of the New York Herald Tribune on the day that Abraham Lincoln was shot. And in those days, just the technology of being able to put a printed word on a piece of paper and tell a story from hundreds of miles away was huge. People, so in the production of the actual newspaper, you printed out type in long, narrow strips of galleys and just laid them on a paper, and they made a plate and they printed the newspaper. So, and to actually set those plates, unlike today's modern technology, there had a cabinet, about yay high. I've got a couple of them home, I forgot to bring them. You know, little pieces of type, 1 letter each. So a typesetter, who was probably one of the most invaluable people on the job, would take a pair of tweezers, pick out a letter on the drawer, put it in a place, do this, make a word, build a sentence, apply. That's why a lot of journalism, abbreviations, punctuation, and things are a little different than, say, modern English style. Just lists, letters, which a printer had to take out of them. And so when Lincoln was killed, it's not like you just take the whole tray and dump all the letters out and then put them back in the right drawers and whatever. They just started. Upper left-hand corner, President attends to attend play at Ford's Theater. Boom, boom, boom. Shots ring out. Boom, boom, boom. President was assassinated. Boom, boom, boom. President taken to next door to the Blair House, I think it was called. Right, recovering. Wounds, status of wounds unknown. The wounds considered mortal. The president's, lingering here. Finally down here, I think it was 7:32 a.m. the president was dead. Down here in the second or third column, almost at the bottom, is the actual news. But the technology at the time made that necessary. And people tolerated it. Well, as things got better and faster, obviously it was easier to remake stuff, so you could take the news element down here and build it up here in lead. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. I spell it L-E-A-D. I'm an old man. We always thought we were talking lead because it leads off your story. I Googled it last night, and I see that now L-E-D-E is considered the preferred spelling, so you may see both. I'm going to stay with the old one because that's what I grew up with, and it's an easy reminder that this is how I want to start. So we sing out the newspaper. We've already done our interview and collected our information here. It's going to be the basis of our story. So now, got an idea of what's going to be important and put it up at the top. So how do we decide what is next important? And that's where we have that third category today, the inverted pyramid, which journalists are not immune to coming up with fancy names or spellings for something. Lead, L-E-A-D or L-E-D-E. Inverted paragraph, basically an upside down triangle. We also just call it that, just not to be so elitist or whatever. And the idea is that these lines that I'm drawing here are going to represent paragraphs. So you want to get the most important details up here. The next most important supporting detail here. Here, and on down. Now if you've got a 6, part of the reason this style became popular, it's kind of a formula writing, is that unlike today where it's all pretty much done on computers, back even in the days when I was here, we ran out the galleys of type, and then it was my job as the night editor, if it came out 3 sentences too long, which 3 sentences do I cut? And you've got to cut it, because in case you haven't noticed, it's amazing. All newscasts seem to end in exactly 30 minutes. And all the news stories seem to fit exactly. Day after day here, it's amazing. Well, obviously that's not true. What we've had to do is figure out, part of the chore of the editors is to figure out what to leave in and what to leave out. And unless you happen to be standing there with an editor who's doing your story, the way you communicate that is putting your top details at the top of the story and work your way down until finally chops off down at the bottom. So, going back to leads real quick, I've got to kind of hammer this home. I would say, especially for young reporters, write a straight news lead, because it main thing it keeps you out of trouble. You're dealing with facts. When you get into the why and how, now unless you've got supporting information, you may be starting to want to stray into the line where you interject your own thoughts, your own opinion, which is fine as long as you can support it. But if you kind of go out in left field a little bit and put something that's not supported, and it turns out to be incorrect, 1, you look foolish, and 2, depending on how severe the misinformation was, you may get yourself sued for libel. And so if you, like I said, all the years I've been in, I've never been I was threatened with a suit once until I explained to the guy about libel law and the truth is a defense, but that's a whole nother topic. So as long as you stick with that straight lead, may seem boring, and yeah, it is, but think about what you're doing. You are trying to communicate information that you have gathered in some form to people who are going to read it. Okay? although it's not necessarily crucial, but keep in the back of mind, who is your, on the TV game, they call it target audience, or who is your audience? I subscribe and get your daily, or your internet thing, and I enjoy it, and you guys are doing a great job. But I'm not your target audience. And when things hopefully get back more to normal, and you're printing more and more copies, students are more and more on campus and picking up a physical copy of paper, that's your primary audience. So you want to relate it down to them. So keep that in mind as you write in this style of supporting details. Make sure, though, more so than ever, that towards the top of the story, the how can be the rest of your story. How are you going to do this? How things are going to keep. But why is it important to me? Because if it is important to me, then I'm going to keep reading, and I'm going to get to the how of what's going on. So, 1 or 2 sentences for a lead. Try, think about the fact that every word that you squander in the lead or throughout the story is one less word that you want to use, or one less word that may put you over the edge and cut you down here. So keep that in mind as you're developing your story after the lead. Greatest lead ever written. Anybody have any thoughts? You've all probably glanced at it or read it. There used to be a game the journalists used to play called Second Paragraph. So everybody would suggest a lead, somebody could suggest a lead, and you had had to come up with what the second paragraph. Think about this, straight from the Bible. Jesus wept. Who and what attracts the attention? Makes me want to read more. What was he weeping about? What the circumstances? 2 words, 1 sentence, very short, very powerful, catches your attention. So you don't have to come up with, you're never going to come up with anything more dramatic than what's in that verse or in the Bible, but doing something to get people, and other people I'm sure will come in and we'll talk about news and values and what's important. Think about, is it something that's local? If a student was attacked on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh, would we care? Probably not. Other than the fact that it's a student. If it happened in New Mexico, say in New Mexico State, would we care? A little bit more because it's closer to home. If it happens on our campus, now we really, localizing it. So that's part of the where element of proximity, of where is it happening. So look for kind of news value. Why is it important? You need to satisfy yourself, answer these questions to yourself so you can further explain it to others. And doing that, learning about that, is the best teacher. And if you're in a bind, you're stuck, somebody tells you, hey, there's a fire over Popejoy. You don't have a lot of time to sit there and think about great dramatic questions. You want to get to the fire chief and find out the news. Which reminds me real quick of a journalism, one of my favorite journalism jokes, told to me by the publisher of the paper in Carlsbad, which I guess when she lives south of here. Artesian's a town about 70 miles away. And the joke goes that a new novice reporter was walking in, and he was the only guy left, all the others reported on something. And a phone call came in to the editor and said, there's a big fire in Artesia, you need to get over there. So looked around, nobody over there, the reporter says, all right, gotta send the rookie. So the guy grabs his notepad, runs out the door, gets there, editor waits and waits and waits. And finally, this is pre-modem days and everything, the reporter calls the editor and says, all right, I'm ready to dictate my story. Here it is. Here's the lead. God and I are sitting on a hill watching Artesia burn. And the editor said, well, forget the fire, interview God. So, again, the priorities. Think about what's important and how you want to best present that's really about what I've got. Hopefully, and it's like anything else. Practice. But as long as you stick to this and get yourself to the point where you know what order they're in and have the ability to change the order depending on the circumstance and what is the most important thing, now you gotta have to battle. Then from there, it's simply a matter of whittling down what facts are most important, all the way down to the bottom. The other thing is, not only does this convenient for the editors, if the reader wants to, he's in a hurry, he's gotta get to work, drinking his coffee, read the paper, he's gotta get to work, and only has time to read 2 or 3 paragraphs, make sure you get the important details up there as much as you can. Hopefully you give them a chance, they can come back to it or whatever, but even if they don't, you've got the important stuff at the very top of the story where they can see it. So, questions, please. Anything at all?
Anyone on the Zoom have any questions?
Hearing none. I hope this was helpful, especially for new reporters who have never done this before, because inevitably, just like any new job, new role, you go in and you interviewed, you've got the job, it's secure, then you wonder, what do I want to do? How do I get started? And once you get started, it just kind of flows. So this is kind of a key that opens the door to a story. It's, a good starting point. It's a safe starting point. And then from there, you just supplement it with what you want to and what you deem is most important. And after a while, you'll find out that you're comfortable enough with that and having these elements in the story so that you can be a little more creative. Today, for example, it's like Eric Maddy is a washed up 46-year-old dude, 46-year veteran of the journalism department, and he had time on his hands on Sunday. You can take some liberties and some license and maybe make it. I always tell people I was not a great writer, but I was a very good reporter because I stuck with that. I had powers of observation. I could take notes, and then very early on, I got a handheld tape recorder just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Took notes beside just so I could go back on tape and get the exact quote in particular. So it's all a matter of just getting started, getting out there. And you'll make mistakes, I guarantee you. That's what editors are for. The fewer mistakes, the things that an editor has to rewrite or change on a deadline, the more they're gonna like you. In the newspaper business, the more they like you, that means the more prominent your story gets played. Is it gonna be on the front page, or is it gonna be back on C8? So a little bit of ego involved there too. So that's what I got. One more time, any questions, any other thoughts? Okay, hopefully we'll be able to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. So hopefully we're gonna make this kind of an ongoing thing where after your staff meeting on the first Sunday of the month, various people will come in and talk about other things in journalism. So I hope you are as attentive and cooperative with